The day the ships appeared, most people were going about their normal lives. Some were at work, others were shopping, and many were just waking up. Ethan Ward was drinking his morning coffee when the news broke. At first, it seemed like a joke. Giant ships hovering over major cities around the world? It had to be fake. But when Ethan stepped outside his apartment in Seattle and looked up, he saw it with his own eyes. A massive dark shape blocked out the sun, casting an unnatural shadow over the city. It was real. Aliens had come to Earth. Ethan was not just any civilian. He was Captain Ethan Ward of the United States Navy, with 15 years of service and numerous commendations. Within hours of the ship's arrival, he received urgent orders to report to the Pentagon. The drive to the airport was chaos, roads jammed with panicked people, stores being emptied of supplies, and police trying to maintain order. By the time Ethan reached Washington, the aliens had made their first broadcast. They called themselves the Valkyrie. Their message was simple. They had come to establish a relationship with Earth. "Captain Ward," said General Martinez as Ethan entered the emergency meeting room, "you've been selected to join our first contact team." Ethan nodded, keeping his face calm despite the storm of emotions inside him. "What's our approach, sir?" "Diplomatic," replied the general. "Dr. Lisa Brooks from MIT will lead the scientific component. You're there to represent our military. Show strength but not aggression." Dr. Brooks was already at the table, surrounded by notes and a tablet displaying images of the alien ships. She was in her late 30s with short brown hair and intense focus in her eyes. "Captain," she greeted him, "hope you're ready to make history." 3 days later, after hasty preparations and countless briefings, Ethan and Lisa stood at the base of the Washington Monument with a small team of diplomats and scientists. Above them, a small craft descended from the massive ship overhead. The landing party of Valkyrie emerged, and Ethan's training barely kept his shock from showing. They stood nearly 8 feet tall with bodies covered in what looked like a combination of skin and exoskeleton. Their 4 arms moved with fluid grace, and their eyes, they had 6 of them, scanned the humans with obvious curiosity. "Welcome to Earth," said the lead diplomat, stepping forward with extended hands. The Valkyrie leader made a sound that the hastily developed translation devices rendered as, "Your world is now under our protection." The wording sent a chill down Ethan's spine. Protection wasn't the same as friendship or alliance. He exchanged a quick glance with Lisa, who had clearly caught the same concerning tone. The meeting continued for several hours. The Valkyrie answered questions selectively, revealing little about their home or intentions. When Lisa asked about their biology, the lead Valkyrie, who called himself Supreme Commander Kalzar, seemed amused. "You find our forms interesting?" Kalzar asked. Without warning, he pulled out a strange device and sliced off one of his own lower arms. Several humans gasped or stepped back. Ethan's hand instinctively moved toward his sidearm before he stopped himself. But there was no pain in the alien's posture. Purple fluid dripped briefly from the wound before it sealed itself. And then, as they watched in amazement, a new limb began forming. "This is why you need our protection," Kalzar said. "Your bodies are fragile and permanent in their damage. We can regrow limbs in days, heal any wound in hours. We live for centuries. You are like children to us." One of the scientists edged closer to examine the growing limb. "Remarkable regenerative capabilities," he whispered. "The medical applications alone." "Our gifts are not for sharing," Kalzar interrupted. "They are for protecting. And now, we will protect Earth." Over the next weeks, it became clear what protection meant. The Valkyrie established bases in major cities worldwide. They began to regulate human technology, trade, and government, all under the guise of helping an inferior species. Ethan found himself stationed at the newly established Joint Operations Facility in Nevada, really just a human-staffed support base for the Valkyrie Command Center nearby. His job was to coordinate between military units and their new alien overseers. Lisa was there too, part of a scientific team studying Valkyrie technology. Or rather, the tiny parts of it we're permitted to see. This isn't right, Ethan said to her one evening as they sat in the facility's cafeteria. Around them, other officers and scientists ate quietly, everyone careful about what they said. Rumors of Valkyrie hearing abilities had everyone on edge. 6 weeks, and they've effectively taken control of every major government, Lisa replied, softly. And we let them do it. Because we were afraid, Ethan said. Did you see the weapons demonstration they gave the Joint Chiefs? They could wipe out a city with a single ship. Lisa nodded grimly. And every day they remind us how superior they are. The regeneration is just the beginning. Their strength, their lifespans, their technology. They want us to feel hopeless. A shadow fell across their table. They looked up to see a Valkyrie, officer standing there, 2 of his arms clasped behind his back, the other 2 holding what appeared to be a communication device. Captain Ward, the alien said, you are needed at the command center. Ethan stood, giving Lisa a quick nod before following the Valkyrie out. The command center was a sleek structure of metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Inside, screens displayed maps of Earth with various markers and symbols, in the Valkyrie language. Supreme Commander Kalzar stood in the center, watching Ethan enter with his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. Captain, he said, we have detected resistance cells forming in your western regions. Your people do not understand our protection. They're scared, Ethan said carefully. Change is difficult for humans. Fear is understandable. Resistance is not. Kalzar gestured to a screen showing what appeared to be a small camp in a forested area. These humans have weapons. They plan to attack our resource collection facility. Ethan recognized the area, somewhere in the former national forests of Oregon. What do you want from me? He asked, though he feared he knew the answer. You will lead a human team to explain our protection to them. If they do not comply, you will help us remove them. And if I refuse? Kalzar's upper arms made a gesture that the translation software didn't recognize. Then you will demonstrate how permanent human injuries are, and someone more cooperative will take your place. That night, Ethan lay awake in his quarters. His orders were to lead a team to the resistance camp the next morning, but every part of him rejected the idea of helping the Valkyrie suppress his own people. Lisa knocked softly on his door just after midnight. Her face was pale but determined. We need to talk, she whispered. Not here. They walked outside, where the desert night was cool and the sky was partially blocked by the ever-present Valkyrie ship. I've been testing samples, Lisa said once they were a safe distance from any buildings. Their cellular structure is remarkable, but it's not magic. It's biology. Advanced, yes, but still biology. Ethan looked at her. What are you saying? I'm saying they're not gods. They're just aliens with different evolutionary paths. She took a deep breath. And I'm also saying that I've made contact with the resistance. 5 years passed since the Valkyrie arrived. The world changed in ways few could have imagined. The aliens established mining operations across the planet, stripping Earth of resources they claimed were needed for protective measures. Humans became workers in these operations, their lives now revolving around meeting Valkyrie quotas. John Reeves wiped sweat from his forehead as he pushed a cart loaded with ore through the underground tunnel. Once a construction worker in Chicago, he now spent his days in what used to be Montana, digging up metals the Valkyrie wanted. The pay was food and shelter, barely enough to survive. Pick up the pace, called Kevin Palmer, John's friend from before the occupation. Kevin had been a high school teacher then. Now he was just another laborer. Shift supervisor is making rounds. The shift supervisors were humans who worked directly for the Valkyrie. They were given slightly better food and living conditions in exchange for keeping other humans in line. Most workers hated them, but John understood the choice. Survival. Wasn't pretty. Another 12 hours and we're done, John replied, putting his shoulder into the cart to get it moving faster over the uneven ground. A new worker joined them at the next junction, helping to push the heavy cart up a slight incline. Olivia Grant had arrived at the mine 3 months ago. She kept to herself mostly, but had gradually become friendly with John and Kevin. "Thanks," John said as they reached the top. Olivia nodded. "They're pushing everyone harder today. Something about a visit from higher-up Valkyrie officials." "Great," Kevin muttered. More eyes watching us fail to meet impossible standards. They continued working through the morning, moving deeper into the newly excavated section of the mine. This area wasn't fully secured yet, with support beams still being installed. The Valkyrie didn't much care about human safety protocols. Workers died and new ones were brought in. Around midday, they heard a strange sound, a deep rumbling that seemed to come from all around them. "That doesn't sound good," John said, looking up at the ceiling where dust had begun to fall. Kevin dropped his tools. "Everyone out. Now." Workers began running toward the main shaft. John turned to follow but noticed Olivia wasn't moving. She was staring at a gauge on the wall, her face pale. "Olivia, we need to go." "The pressure readings," she said. "This whole section is going to—" Her words were cut off by a deafening roar as the tunnel behind them collapsed. The shockwave threw them forward. John felt himself flying through the air before crashing into a wall of rock. Pain exploded through his body, particularly his right arm, which took the brunt of the impact. Darkness followed. When John woke, he was lying in a dimly lit space. His entire body ached, but the pain in his right arm was unbearable. He tried to see it but could barely turn his head. "Don't move," came Olivia's voice. She moved into his field of vision, her face dirty and a cut above her eye. "You're badly hurt." "Where are we?" John's voice was raspy, his throat dry. "Abandoned storage room off the east tunnel," she said. "Kevin helped me carry you here before." He went to get help. John managed to glance down at his arm and immediately wished he hadn't. It was crushed beyond recognition, bloody and twisted with bone visible in places. "That bad, huh?" he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. Olivia didn't pretend. "It's bad. The Valkyrie medical team won't waste resources on it. They'll just—" She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. John knew the Valkyrie policy on seriously injured workers. "How many others?" "At least 20 dead," she said quietly. "Maybe more still trapped." They sat in silence for a while. John's mind raced despite the pain. If the Valkyrie decided he wasn't worth healing, his life was over. Even if they let him live, he'd be useless with one arm. Kevin returned an hour later, slipping quietly through the door. His expression told them everything they needed to know. "They're not sending anyone," he said. "They've written off this section and everyone in it." "Typical," Olivia muttered. "We need to get John to the surface," Kevin said. "Maybe we can—" "No," Olivia interrupted. "They'll just discard him. I have another idea." She hesitated, looking at both men. "Before I came here, I was a medical researcher. I was studying regenerative medicine when the Valkyrie arrived." John looked at her through pain-clouded eyes. "What are you saying?" "I've been continuing my research in secret," she said, "using samples of Valkyrie tissue from their molted exoskeletons. I think their regenerative abilities might be transferable." Kevin looked skeptical. "You mean like a cure? Some miracle drug?" "Not exactly," Olivia said. "More like a radical treatment. Something experimental." She turned to John. "I've been working on combining their DNA with human stem cells." "Has it worked?" John asked. Olivia's face tightened. "I don't know. I haven't had a human subject." She took a deep breath. "Until now, potentially." John looked down at his mangled arm, then back at Olivia. "What's the worst that happens? I die? I'm already dead by their standards." "This is crazy," Kevin said. "Olivia, you're talking about using alien DNA on a human. We have no idea what could happen." "We know exactly what will happen if we do nothing," she countered. She turned back to John. "It's your choice." Pain shot through John's arm again, causing him to wince. "Do it," he said through gritted teeth. "Whatever you need to do." Olivia nodded and opened a small bag she had been carrying. Inside was a collection of vials, syringes, and medical tools. "I need to amputate what's left of the arm first," she explained. "The treatment works better on a clean wound." Kevin turned away. "I'll keep watch at the door." The next hour was the worst of John's life. Even with the painkiller Olivia gave him, the amputation was excruciating. She worked quickly, her hands steady despite the circumstances. When it was done, she prepared a syringe filled with bluish liquid. "This contains the Valkyrie genetic material combined with human stem cells," she explained as she injected it directly into the wound at his shoulder. "In theory, it should trigger regeneration. In practice," she shrugged, "we'll see." "How long?" John asked weakly, feeling lightheaded from pain and blood loss. "If it works at all, weeks maybe. The Valkyrie regrow limbs in days, but they've evolved that ability over thousands of years. For a human body encountering this for the first time, it will be slower." Kevin returned from his post at the door. "We need to keep him hidden." "If the Valkyrie find out what we're doing," Olivia nodded. "This room is off their maps now. We can bring supplies, take shifts watching him." "And if it doesn't work?" John asked. Olivia met his gaze directly. "Then at least we tried. And maybe learned something that will help the next person." As darkness took him again, John's last thought was that for the first time since the Valkyrie arrived, someone was fighting back, not with weapons, but with the very gift, the aliens thought, made them superior. Days passed in the dim light of the abandoned storage room. John drifted in and out of consciousness, fever racking his body as it fought to accept the strange new cells Olivia had introduced. Kevin and Olivia took turns caring for him, bringing water and food when they could slip away from their shifts without being noticed. "Any change?" Kevin asked on the 5th day, entering the room with a small bundle of stolen medical supplies. Olivia shook her head. "His fever's still high. The wound isn't infected, but his body is definitely reacting to the treatment." She dabbed a damp cloth on John's forehead. "It could be rejecting it. Or accepting it," Kevin suggested, trying to sound hopeful. John opened his eyes slightly. "Stop talking about me like I'm not here," he said, his voice weak but with a hint of his old humor. Olivia smiled. "Well, look who's decided to join us. How do you feel?" "Like I got hit by a truck," John replied. "Then the truck backed up and hit me again." He tried to sit up but winced with the effort. "Take it easy," Olivia said, helping him into a sitting position. "You've been through a lot." John looked down at the stump where his right arm had been. It was wrapped in bandages, but there was no blood seeping through. "Doesn't hurt as much today," he observed. "That's a good sign," Olivia said. She carefully unwrapped the bandages to check the wound. The skin had sealed completely, the amputation site now covered with smooth, slightly pale tissue. "Impressive healing speed," she murmured. "Much faster than normal." "Does that mean it's working?" John asked. "It means something's happening," Olivia replied cautiously. "Your body is accepting the treatment, but I don't know yet if regeneration will occur." Kevin handed John a water bottle. "The Valkyrie have declared you officially dead, by the way. Your name was on the casualty list." John took a sip. "That's convenient, actually. Means they won't be looking for me." "We still need to be careful," Olivia warned. "If they find you alive, they'll want to know how you survived with injuries that severe." Over the next few weeks, John regained his strength. The fever broke, and he was able to move around their small hideout. Olivia and Kevin had expanded, it connecting to another abandoned room that gave them more space. They brought books, blankets, and even rigged a small heating element using parts from broken mining equipment. It was the morning of the 3rd week when John woke to an intense itching sensation at his shoulder. He reached up with his left hand to scratch it and froze. The stump felt different, bumpy and uneven where it had been smooth before. "Olivia," he called out. She had stayed the night sleeping on a makeshift bed in the corner. She was instantly awake. "What's wrong?" "Something's happening," John said, pulling off his shirt to reveal the shoulder stump. Olivia gasped. Where there had been a smooth, sealed amputation site, there was now a small, rounded protrusion about the size of a golf ball. The skin over it had a faint bluish tint. "It's working," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "John, it's actually working." Kevin arrived later that day for his shift and was equally amazed. "I wouldn't have believed it if I wasn't seeing it," he said, staring at the small growth. "We need to document this," Olivia said, pulling out a small notebook and pencil. She began making detailed notes and sketches. If this continues, it could change everything. And continue it did. Over the next several days, the growth extended, gradually taking on the shape of an upper arm. They could see the formation of what would become an elbow. The process was slow, but steady. "It's not as fast as the Valkyrie," Olivia noted about 2 weeks later as she measured the growing arm. "But it's exponentially faster than any natural human healing." By now, the arm had grown to just past the elbow. John could feel sensations in it. Pressure, temperature, even pain when Olivia poked it with a needle as part of her tests. "Can you move it?" Kevin asked. John concentrated, and to their amazement, the new partial limb twitched. "It's like learning to walk again," he said. "I can feel the connection, but it's not automatic yet." "Your brain is rebuilding neural pathways," Olivia explained. "It has to relearn how to control this new limb." As the days turned into weeks, the arm continued to grow. Fingers formed, joints articulated, and muscles developed. The skin maintained that slight bluish tint, but otherwise it looked remarkably like a normal human arm, except that it had grown where there had been nothing. 2 months after the initial treatment, John stood in their hideout, flexing all 5 fingers on his new right hand. "It's stronger than my left arm," he noted, lifting a heavy piece of mining equipment with ease. "The Valkyrie cells must have integrated with your muscle tissue," Olivia said. "They're not just enabling regeneration, they're enhancing your physical abilities." Kevin watched from the doorway, keeping an eye out for any passing workers or guards. "We need to think about what this means," he said. "If this treatment could work for others, it could change the balance of power." Olivia finished his thought. "The Valkyrie think their regenerative abilities make them superior. What happens when humans can do the same thing?" John opened and closed his new hand, watching the fingers move smoothly. "We need to find out if there are other side effects. For all we know, I could start growing an exoskeleton next." Olivia nodded. "I've been tracking everything carefully. So far, the only changes seem to be the enhanced strength and the slight color difference in the skin." A sudden noise in the corridor outside made them all freeze. Kevin peered out cautiously. "Patrol," he whispered, "and it's not the usual route." They quickly turned off their small light and huddled in silence. The sound of heavy Valkyrie footsteps approached their hideout, then paused right outside the door. John tensed, instinctively clenching his new fist. The door slowly opened, and a beam of light swept across the room. A tall Valkyrie guard stood in the doorway, his 6 eyes blinking as they adjusted to the darkness. "Human life signs detected in unassigned area," the guard said in the mechanical tone they used when speaking the human language. "Identify yourselves." Kevin and Olivia were pressed against the back wall, partially hidden by storage containers. But John stood in the open, his newly regrown arm clearly visible in the beam of the guard's light. The Valkyrie's eyes focused on John, then on his arm. All 6 eyes widened in what could only be described as shock. "Impossible," the guard said, reaching for the communication device at his belt. Without thinking, John lunged forward. His new arm moved with unexpected speed and strength, grabbing the guard's arm before it could reach the communicator. The Valkyrie tried to break free, but John's grip was unyielding. "That's not possible," the guard said again, all 6 eyes fixed on John's hand gripping his arm. "Human strength is inferior." "Not anymore," John replied, and swung his other fist directly at the guard's head. John's fist connected with the Valkyrie guard's face with a force that surprised even him. The alien staggered backward, purple fluid leaking from cracks in its exoskeleton. Before the guard could recover, John struck again, this time aiming for the communication device. It shattered under his blow. "We need to go," Kevin said urgently. "Now." More will come looking for this one. Olivia was already gathering her notes and the remaining vials of her treatment. The east tunnel should be clear. It leads to the surface about 2 miles from the main compound. The Valkyrie guard was trying to rise. John hesitated, then delivered a final blow that left the alien unconscious. "I don't want to kill him," he explained to the others, "but we need time to escape." They moved quickly through the dark tunnels, using the small flashlight Kevin had brought. John's new arm seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, the bluish tint of the skin more noticeable now. "Your arm," Olivia whispered as they paused at a junction. "It's reacting to the adrenaline in your system." John looked down at his limb. The muscles seemed more defined than before, the veins visible beneath the skin. "It's getting stronger," he realized. "We can study it later," Kevin said. "Right now we need to get to the surface." They continued upward through the winding tunnels. Twice they had to hide as groups of workers passed by. It was the late shift change, with tired miners heading back to their quarters while fresh ones took their places. Finally, they reached a small maintenance exit that opened onto a wooded hillside. The night air was cool and fresh after months. Underground. In the distance they could see the lights of the main mining complex. "Which way?" John asked. Kevin pointed north. "There's a resistance camp about 20 miles that way. I've heard rumors about it for months." "You never said anything," Olivia said, surprised. "Wasn't sure who to trust," Kevin replied. "But I guess we're past keeping secrets now." They traveled through the night, keeping to the forests and avoiding the roads. John found himself able to move faster and with less fatigue than before. His new arm seemed to have affected his entire body, giving him strength and endurance he had never had. Dawn was breaking when they heard the sound of pursuit. Valkyrie hover vehicles moved through the valley below them, search beams sweeping across the landscape. "They're tracking us," Kevin said grimly. "How?" Olivia asked. "We didn't take anything with tracking devices." John looked down at his arm. "It's me," he said quietly. "They can detect the Valkyrie DNA in my new arm." Olivia nodded slowly. "That makes sense. Their biology is different from ours. They must have ways to detect their own kind." "I should go in a different direction," John suggested. "Lead them away while you two reach the resistance camp." "No," Kevin and Olivia said almost in unison. "We stay together," Kevin continued. "The resistance will want to see what Olivia has done. This could be the key to fighting back." They pushed on, moving deeper into the dense forest. The sound of pursuit grew fainter as they climbed higher into the mountains, but by midday it was clear they were being followed on foot. The hover vehicles couldn't navigate the thick trees, but Valkyrie trackers could. "We need to stand and fight," John said as they reached a small clearing. "I can hold them off while you two run ahead." Olivia looked at him skeptically. "You're strong, John, but you're not invincible. There could be dozens of them. But I heal now." John pointed. "Out. Maybe not as fast as they do, but faster than any normal human. That gives me a chance." Before they could argue further, a Valkyrie tracker burst into the clearing. It was smaller than the guard John had fought in the mine, built for speed rather than strength. It raised a weapon, aiming at Kevin. John moved without thinking. His new arm shot out, grabbing a rock the size of a baseball. He threw it with impossible accuracy, knocking the weapon from the alien's grip. Then he charged, tackling the tracker to the ground. The fight was brief but violent. The Valkyrie was quick, landing several cutting blows with the sharp edges of its exoskeleton. John felt pain as his skin tore but kept fighting. To his amazement, the wounds began closing almost as soon as they were inflicted. Finally, he pinned the tracker down. "How many more are coming?" he demanded. The alien's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of fear or surprise. "What are you?" it asked instead of answering. "Something new," John replied. More trackers were approaching. They could hear them moving through the undergrowth. Kevin helped John bind the captured Valkyrie with strips torn from his shirt. "We need to keep moving," Olivia said. She had been watching the fight with intense interest, making mental notes about John's healing rate. They left the bound tracker and continued northward, moving as quickly as they could through the rough terrain. John's wounds had already closed completely, leaving only faint blue lines where cuts had been. As night fell again, they spotted lights ahead, not the harsh white of Valkyrie technology, but the warm orange of campfires. A human settlement hidden in a box canyon. The resistance camp, Kevin said, relief evident in his voice. They approached cautiously. At the narrow entrance to the canyon, armed guards stopped them. The guards looked thin but determined, their weapons a mix of stolen Valkyrie technology and human firearms. "We're looking for sanctuary," Kevin explained. "We escaped from the Montana mining complex." The guards exchanged glances. "That's 50 miles from here," one said doubtfully. "No one escapes from those mines." "We did." John stepped forward into the light. "And we brought something that might help all of us." The guards' eyes widened as they saw John's arm, the bluish tint clearly visible in the firelight. "What happened to your arm?" one asked. Olivia spoke up. "I can explain everything, but we need to speak with whoever leads this camp. It's important, maybe the most important discovery since the Valkyrie arrived." After a brief discussion, the guards led them into the canyon. The resistance camp was larger than they had expected, at least 100 people living in a mix of tents, small cabins and caves dug into the canyon walls. Children played near the campfires while adults worked on weapons, prepared food, or stood guard. At the far end of the canyon, they were brought to a larger cabin. Inside, a woman sat at a table covered with maps and handwritten reports. She looked up as they entered, her eyes sharp and assessing. "I'm Susan Winters," she said. "I lead this camp." Her gaze fixed on John's arm. "And I think you'd better tell me exactly what you've brought to my doorstep." John looked at Olivia, who nodded encouragingly. He stepped forward and held out his new hand, to Susan. "Hope," he said simply. "We've brought hope." Susan Winters listened carefully as Olivia explained her treatment and showed her research notes. The resistance leader's expression remained neutral, but her eyes betrayed her excitement. "So this serum combines Valkyrie DNA with human stem cells," Susan summarized when Olivia finished, "and the result is regenerative abilities similar to the aliens plus enhanced strength." "Yes," Olivia confirmed. "John is our first success, but I believe the treatment could work for others." Susan turned to John. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to his new arm. John nodded and extended it. Susan examined it closely, noting the slight blue tint and the enhanced musculature. "How much stronger are you?" she asked. "About 3 times stronger in this arm than my left," John replied. "And I heal quickly. Cuts seal in minutes instead of days." Susan sat back, considering. "We have people who could use this, injured, fighters who could return to the field." She hesitated. "Including me." For the first time, John noticed that Susan's left leg was missing below the knee, replaced by a crude prosthetic made from scavenged parts. "I lost it during the initial invasion," Susan explained, following his gaze. "I was an Army Ranger then. Got caught in an explosion when the Valkyrie took Fort Bragg." "The treatment could give you a new leg," Olivia said. "But I only have 3 more doses prepared, and I'd need more Valkyrie biological material to make more." "That can be arranged," Susan replied with a grim smile. "We've been collecting anything we can from fallen Valkyrie for years. We just didn't know what to do with it until now." Over the next week, Olivia worked with the Resistance's medical team to refine her treatment. John continued to develop new abilities as his body further integrated the Valkyrie DNA. His strength increased, and his senses became sharper. Most surprisingly, he found he could sense the presence of other Valkyrie at a distance. "It's like a buzzing in my head," he explained to Olivia during one of her examinations. "The closer they are, the stronger it gets." "Fascinating," Olivia murmured, making notes. "They must have some kind of biological communication system. Your body has adopted it." Susan Winters volunteered to be the second human to receive the treatment. The procedure was similar to John's, though Olivia made some refinements based on what she had learned. The resistance leader's missing leg was cleaned and prepared, then injected with the serum. The results came faster this time. Within 2 weeks, Susan had a visible growth at her knee. By the end of the month, she had a partial leg. The new limb had the same bluish tint as John's arm. "It's working even better than with John," Olivia told Kevin as they watched Susan test her growing leg, putting weight on it for the first time. "The integration is more complete. The growth rate faster." "What does that mean?" Kevin asked. "It means the treatment is evolving," Olivia replied. "Each time we use it, it becomes more efficient, more adapted to human physiology." As Susan's leg grew, the resistance prepared for action. Scouts reported increased Valkyrie activity in the region. They were searching for the escaped humans, particularly John. "They're afraid," Susan said during a strategy meeting. "For the first time since they arrived, the Valkyrie are afraid of what humans might become." The third dose went to a young woman named Lily Chen, who had lost her right hand during a raid on a Valkyrie supply depot. Her regeneration was even faster than Susan's, with a complete hand forming in just 3 weeks. More importantly, she developed the same sensitivity to Valkyrie presence that John had. "It's like we're creating a new kind of human," Olivia said, one evening as she reviewed her data. "One that takes the Valkyrie's greatest strength and improves upon it." "But why is it getting better with each person?" Kevin asked. He had become Olivia's assistant, helping her document and analyze the changes in the enhanced humans. "I think our bodies are learning," Olivia suggested. "Each time the treatment encounters human DNA, it adapts, becomes more compatible." The enhanced abilities proved crucial when the Valkyrie finally located the resistance camp. John sensed them coming nearly an hour before they arrived, giving the humans time to prepare an ambush. The battle was short, but decisive. John, Susan, and Lily led the defense, their enhanced strength and reflexes allowing them to fight the Valkyrie on equal terms. Most surprisingly, during the height of the battle, John discovered he could sense what Susan and Lily were thinking. A telepathic connection had formed between the enhanced humans. "Left flank," John thought, and immediately Susan turned to address the threat without a word being spoken. The Valkyrie retreated, leaving behind several dead and one captured officer. The resistance fighters cheered, celebrating their first real victory against the aliens. The captured Valkyrie was brought before Susan. The alien's 6 eyes blinked nervously as it looked at the humans with their blue-tinged limbs. "What are you doing to yourselves?" it asked, its translator making the words sound flat and mechanical. "Evolving," Susan replied simply. The alien's eyes fixed on John. "You were the first. The one from the mine. The High Command is very interested in you." "Why?" John asked. "Because you should not be possible," the Valkyrie replied. "Our scientists said human biology was too primitive to accept our genetic material. They said you would die." "They were wrong." Olivia stepped forward. "Human bodies are remarkably adaptable. We've not only accepted your regenerative abilities, we've improved them." The Valkyrie's outer shell seemed to shudder. "You must stop this. The integration will not remain stable." "That's a lie," Susan said. "You're afraid because we've taken your greatest advantage." The alien was silent for a moment. "You do not understand. There is a reason we evolved these abilities over millennia. Your bodies are forcing the adaptation too quickly. The consequences will be unpredictable." Before anyone could respond, alarms sounded at the perimeter. More Valkyrie forces were approaching, a much larger group than before. "They're coming from all directions," a scout reported breathlessly. "At least 100, maybe more." "They're here for me," the captured Valkyrie said. "And for the altered humans." John looked at Susan and Lily, feeling the telepathic connection between them growing stronger. Then, to his surprise, he felt others joining the link. Humans throughout the camp who had been treated with Olivia's latest version of the serum, which had been diluted to treat minor injuries. "Everyone who's received even a trace of the treatment," John said in wonder. "We're all connected now." Susan nodded, feeling it too. "Then let's use that. Everyone with enhancements to the front lines. The rest fall back to the caves." As the enhanced humans moved to defend the camp, John felt their shared consciousness expanding, becoming something greater than the sum of its parts. Ideas and strategies flowed between them without words. They moved as a single unit, anticipating each other's actions. The Valkyrie attacked at dawn, expecting to find frightened, disorganized humans. Instead, they met a coordinated force that knew their every move before they made it. The aliens fell back in confusion, as enhanced humans demonstrated abilities even the Valkyrie didn't possess. In the command center, Olivia watched through binoculars as John stepped forward to face the Valkyrie commander. Though she couldn't hear their exchange, she saw the alien's reaction. All 6 eyes widened in what could only be fear. "It's over," Kevin said quietly beside her. "Isn't it?" Olivia lowered the binoculars and smiled. "No," she replied. "It's just beginning."